We have special guest with us. Dan Cohen is here. He's an independent journalist and filmmaker based in Washington, D.C. He's reported from Israel, Palestine, Latin America, and the U.S.-Mexico border for outlets including Mondoweiss, The Nation, Alternate, Gray Zone. He recently launched his own journalistic outlet called Uncaptured Media. Please welcome back to the show, Dan Cohen. Hey, Dan.
Hey, Jimmy. Thanks for having me.
So what we're here to talk about today is this guy. So this guy, his name is Peter Hotez. Now, I bumped into this guy on Twitter because he was bragging about how hard he worked on getting a vaccine for COVID. And he was angry at anybody who questioned him. And what I said to him was, hey, he said, I didn't sleep for 6 months so we could get a vaccine. And what I said to him was like, hey, maybe if you would have got a little sleep, you could have invented a better vaccine that actually worked better. And, maybe stop transmission and contraction, stopped it, like what people want from a vaccine, that kind of a thing. So I just want to, so Dan has
stayed up all night making this is what he said.
So I want to show you this real quick. He went on Rogan just to show you what kind of a piece of it this guy is, right? And this is the guy they think is going to replace Fauci. So let me show you this real quick.
Do you take care of your immune system in other ways? Do you take probiotics? Are you cautious about your diet?
I'm not as cautious about my diet as I should be. I'm a junk foodaholic.
So he thinks he's going to make a joke and get off the hook, that Joe's going to let him go. Because he's just sitting there telling him all about vaccines and how vaccines they're the key to health. All kinds of vaccines. He's working on all different vaccines. He has been his whole life, hasn't really invented anyone that's worth anything, but that's what he's talking about. Vaccines for everything, just like Bill Gates says. Vaccines to cure things that you don't need it to cure for. So he's really super vaccine-y. And then Joe Rogan says, but what do you do to stay healthy? And he just says, I'm a junk foodaholic. And he thinks that they're going to have a laugh and he's going to move on. Joe Rogan does not have a laugh and he doesn't move on. And it exposes this guy to the point where he starts to lie at the end of this. He's literally going to start lying. So watch this.
Actually.
Well, that seems like a terrible thing for your health.
It is a terrible thing for my health and something my wife is working on.
But that seems ridiculous for someone who works with health.
Yeah.
What's going on with you, man?
Sometimes, man, I just don't get it right.
How often?
How often?
How often do I steal a bag of chips or something like that?
How often do you eat garbage?
I don't know. No, hopefully not every day, but
hopefully not every day.
Maybe a couple of times a week.
Oh.
That's what with Rachel, my daughter with autism. That's like our thing is to go to the it's called the burger joint or to Shake Shack to get a cheeseburger. We'll sneak some fries. So
you
living large, we call it.
Like that mouth pleasure so much, you're willing to sacrifice a little bit.
I am. Yeah. I have to concede that's the case.
Well, there's, I don't have to tell you, but there's a large body of data that connects poor diet to a host of diseases. Mm-hmm. That seems like a crazy decision for a guy.
So it's always hilarious to me to watch a pothead comedian who announces men fighting in cages school the top medical people in the country. He did it to Sanjay Gupta, and here he is doing it to this guy.
Well, I don't like him snack shaming this man.
Your line of work.
There you go. Sometimes it's not all brain. It's something else.
But if you ate healthy food, the thing is your body starts craving healthy food. You start feeling
no question.
results.
No question about it.
Do you take vitamins?
I don't take vitamins.
He doesn't take vitamins.
Yeah,
Wow.
I don't think they do. I don't think they're needed. Because most
he goes, I don't think they do anything. I don't think they do. Did you hear? This is the guy who people have been listening to about vaccines for years now. They had a Dan Hotez. I had a Hotez day in Austin for him. That's this guy.
I'll bet you if they extended the definition of vaccines to mean vitamins, he would take them.
Yes. All right, here we go.
And the American.
Hold up. You don't think they're needed while you're eating junk food?
Well, hopefully I'm not only eating junk food,
Okay,
right?
but there's a large body of clinical research on the efficacy of vitamins, especially vitamins D, vitamins B.
I have taken vitamin D for periods, and the recommendation of my internist. Yeah.
What about essential fatty acids, which are great for your brain, fish oil, all these different things that are fantastic for
I'm not going to argue with you.
What is going on with you, doctor?
You got it. You got it over me. Yeah.
You got to listen, but you would have a much better argument. Don't you think?
You're making my wife's day here.
If you're taking care of yourself 100% instead of
but you still need your vaccines.
I'm sure you do, but
it would be awesome if that guy lit up a cigarette while he's like, Jesus, Joe, get a vaccine.
So let me bring Dan back in here very briefly. So that was my first introduction to him, and that's why I knew this guy was a fraud. And now you've actually done the research, and you completely expose him. It's really great work. Now, there's a video that I saw where you talk about his background before COVID. Super sketchy. He's totally in bed with the Gates Foundation, all those types of people. So his background is super sketchy. But now I want to show the video you actually put together about him around COVID. And now I'm going to play this. It's going to be like around 8 or 9 minutes. But it's super compelling, and it's really well done. So let's play it, and then we'll bring Dan back in, and we'll talk about it.
Peter Hotez has built a career in the nexus of pharmaceutical giants, billionaire foundations, and the U.S. government. In the COVID era, he has become an evangelist for the emergent biomedical security regime, attacking anyone who deviates from its diktats.
We have to recognize that anti-vaccine activism, which I actually call anti-science aggression.
Anti-science aggression. Anti-science, anti-vaccine aggression. Anti-vaccine aggression. Anti-science is now a leading cause of death. It's killing more Americans than gun violence, nuclear proliferation, or cyber attacks.
Hotez posits that resistance to novel pharmaceutical products is a white supremacist plot that springs from the Republican Party and is taking over the world.
The most vaccine hesitant group in the United States are what are being called Republicans. Some polls call it white Republicans. It's somehow married now to far right-wing extremism and white nationalist groups, not confined anymore to the United States. It's happening across Europe now. You're seeing the disinformation go into Africa and elsewhere. This is now a full-on globalized anti-science movement.
These forces, he says, are supported by Vladimir Putin.
Are you
Putin
kidding
government
me?
has, this has been reported by U.S. and British intelligence, has been piling on with this whole systematic program of what's being called weaponized health communications. Weaponized health communication through their bots and trolls, trying to destabilize democracies with anti-vaccine, anti-science messages and targeting scientists.
To counter this, he has proposed a series of measures. First, for so-called anti-science to be punished as a hate crime, saying both existing legislation be extended and new protections created. He's called for the U.S. government to censor what he calls anti-science terrorist groups.
I've been having discussions with the federal government for many years now. Is we've got to do something about it, take this down and create an interagency task force.
Use the full power of the U.S. federal government to see what levers are available.
We need help from Homeland Security. We need help from the Commerce Department, from the Justice Department, and the State Department.
Get it off of the cable news channels and the far right podcasters.
We need to do something more aggressive. Have to go into that dark place.
The UN, WHO, and NATO, he says, must join this censorship effort.
It's a demonization of very credible people who are actually expert at the science of vaccines and have developed appropriate questions and concerns, and he dismisses them as an enemy, and he calls upon even security agencies to coordinate and go after these people who are actually practicing science.
But somebody like this not only wants to deny the science, but wants to put people like me in jail and make us lose our license. This is a true sociopath. This is German-level sociopathy.
He has called for governments and international bodies to carry out a counteroffensive.
Let's talk to the people who know about cyber attacks, who know about nuclear proliferation, who know about global terrorism. There might be some tools there that we can use to fight this anti-science aggression, because I believe it's reached that same level.
And written that they must take direct, even confrontational approaches with Russia. He even called for a CDC coup against the executive branch.
If we basically decapitated the leadership of the government in order to run COVID-19 response, who can step up? Can the CDC do it?
If we don't have a federal government, if we don't have the White House or the executive branch of the government engaged in doing this, do we have other options? Are there levers Congress can push? I think we have to start looking at this.
Hotez consistently cites the U.S. government, its intelligence cutouts, and proxies. His claims about Russian interference cite a dubious report from Novetta, a a contractor for numerous branches of the U.S. military, owned by a firm called Accenture, which is tied to U.S. intelligence and the World Economic Forum.
Is Peter really fully independent? Is he acting as an independent agent in good conscience and academic? Or is he deeply tied to the deep state and the intelligence community?
His censorship efforts have been abetted by the Anti-Defamation League.
And with that anti-science aggression goes hand in glove with anti-Semitism.
The ADL, ostensibly a hate monitoring group, is primarily an Israel lobby outfit, known for conflating criticism of the state of Israel and support for Palestinian rights with anti-Semitism. In the COVID era, it has sought to conflate skepticism and criticism of novel pharmaceutical products with anti-Semitism.
COVID has led to a new form of variant of anti-Semitism.
These censorship efforts have had some successes. When Instagram suspended Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Hotez praised it as the first time that Facebook/Instagram has taken a step towards dismantling the anti-science empire, and that hopefully this is only the beginning. In September 2021, Houston, Texas resident Marissa Hansen interrupted Hotez during an appearance at the Congregation Emmanuel.
I'm sorry, but I have to interrupt. Dr. Hotez, I know about the children that have died from the Pfizer vaccine, and it's your job to not deny that. It's not a hate crime to question science. You understand that. I will leave now.
It's not unusual. Actually, she was quite well behaved, so we have to be thankful for for that.
In response, the congregation's rabbi banned her for life. While Peter Hotez demands censorship and international action against foreign countries, he has contradicted himself at virtually every turn throughout the COVID era. In the first year, when Trump was still president, Hotez warned about the dangers of rushing vaccines under emergency use authorization.
I don't think EUAs have a place for vaccines.
We've never done an emergency use authorization for a major vaccine released to the public. What does that mean? We know it's a lesser quality review. What's the FDA going to do to ensure public safety?
While Hotez may have had political motivations to cast doubt on the coronavirus products, he had good reason to be concerned. In March 2020, Hotez gave congressional testimony to warn about the dangers of coronavirus vaccines.
One of the things that we're not hearing a lot about is the unique potential safety problem of coronavirus vaccine. With certain types of respiratory virus vaccines, you get immunized, and then when you get actually exposed to the virus, you get this kind of paradoxical immune enhancement phenomenon. We started developing coronavirus vaccines, and our colleagues, we noticed in laboratory animals that they started to show some of the same immune pathology that resembled what had happened 50 years earlier. So we said, oh my God, this is going to be problematic.
While Hotez warned against fast-tracking a vaccine, he was appointed by Anthony Fauci to lead an NIH program with pharmaceutical executives, the Gates Foundation, and others that did exactly that. In May 2020, anticipating public concern about what he had admitted was rushed testing, potentially unsafe products, and a new platform, Hotez wrote that the communications and missteps around the rollout of COVID-19 vaccines may require a period of damage control, and called for the White House and NIH to shape a well-crafted vaccine communication plan and designate a trusted spokesperson who can articulate and carry the message, an apparent reference to himself. Once the FDA had given emergency use authorization, Hotez reversed his public stance.
So what's your reaction to this approval out of this second vaccine?
No, it's fantastic. The emergency use authorization closely approximates the full approval process.
Unbelievable.
So there's nothing really rushed. Any vaccine released by emergency use authorization by the FDA is an outstanding vaccine.
Take whatever vaccine is really offered to you.
Hotez said that once enough people were injected with 2 doses, viral transmission would stop and other measures would no longer be necessary.
News is good. It's saying even after 6 months, it still looks like it's really strong and durable. So this is going to be a long-lasting vaccine. A single dose is not very effective, but 2 doses fully vaccinated people are.
A week or 2 after the second dose, the masks can start to come off.
And guess what? You can have everything you've asked for in terms of not requiring social distancing and masks. We can have an extraordinary quality of life.
This is time limited. It's not in perpetuity. Well,
This is not in perpetuity. We are going to vaccinate our way out of this epidemic starting in the summer. If enough Americans get vaccinated, we could actually halt virus transmission potentially.
If you do the simple math, I did a back of the envelope calculation.
Once you get over 65% of the population with a single dose of the vaccine and 50% 2 doses, the amount of transmission will really start to decline.
60 to 70%, 60 to 80% threshold. We need to get to about 75% before we interrupt transmission.
Around 3/4 of the U.S. population. Roughly 80% of the U.S. population.
2 doses turned to 3.
I think ultimately a third immunization with the mRNA vaccines will probably be needed at some point. We thought there was a pretty high likelihood we might have to give a third immunization down the line anyway at some point because we had no idea about the durability of any protection of any of these vaccines. So if you got a 2-dose Pfizer Moderna vaccine, think of it
COVID is a 3-dose vaccine. We ultimately will need to give a third immunization, and I've been pretty much saying that all along. This was always a 3-dose vaccine, and so this was all predicted and predictable. I've always said this is a 3-dose vaccine. 2 mRNA vaccines were always a 3-dose vaccine. We've known for a while that this was going to be a 3-dose vaccine. The big unknown is what happens to those of us who got 3 doses. I don't have the answer. You need that third immunization to get a 30 to 40-fold rise. After you get that third immunization, you do get a big boost in virus neutralizing antibodies.
By November 2021, the U.S. population had met what Hotez and the government called fully vaccinated.
Today, we hit 2 important milestones. 80% of adults now have at least their first shot, and 70% of adults are now fully vaccinated.
But the goalposts were shifted, and the booster campaign was just getting started.
And we're going to have to change the definition of fully vaccinated. What counts as full immunization will be 3 doses just because we gave those first 2 doses so close together. The idea that 2 immunizations constitutes full immunizations is not even close. You need that booster, and you probably need the second booster. If you've gotten a single boost and you're eligible, get your second boost.
The solution here is just continue mass vaccination as aggressively as possible?
Yes.
That's right.
Are you expecting, as a result, for these vaccines to essentially become a twice yearly thing?
Of course, with mRNA, that may be what's required. You need 2 boosters. You're going to need a third booster. 2 boosts really makes the difference. Get your second boost.
There are these new boosters. They've been available for a little over a week. Who should get them?
Well, anyone who's eligible. Once you're more than out 4 or 5 months from your last booster.
No matter where you're at, maximize out your vaccinations. And even if you've gotten a single booster, you need 2 boosters.
Now's the time to get a booster if you haven't been boosted in a while.
2 to 4 months out, you're going to need a third booster as well, a 5th
2 months.
immunization. Third boosters, meaning 5th immunizations, new bivalent booster. You want to get Paxlovid. That gives you an extra layer of protection as well. You need to get that booster. People need to get their bivalent booster. And
The important message that I have this morning is get your new bivalent booster. If you've not gotten it, you have to get it.
They're talking about the third shot. And is that the bivalent or is it the 4th booster or does it matter? Like, can you help me understand?
So before Elise was asking me that very question, I said, don't worry so much about the number of boosters. Worry about when you got your last booster. Okay.
Attempting to boost ourselves out of this pandemic is in my opinion, the immunological equivalent of heroin addiction. Okay. And what I mean by that is that we're trying to get, we're trying to squeeze more and more benefit, which we're not getting. We're getting less and less benefit for more and more risk of side effects. The more doses, the worse it gets. So this is counterproductive. It's not just that it's not working, it's counterproductive.
When Johnson & Johnson's product was pulled after causing blood clots,
the J&J vaccine does cause a rare serious event, cerebral thrombotic event.
Hotez continued to push them.
Well, I don't have concern about the vaccine. It's a good vaccine. It's an excellent vaccine.
After years of blaming the unvaccinated for the virus, demanding censorship, and seeking to criminalize criticism, Hotez casually admitted that the injections, in fact, don't stop transmission.
We are not stopping infection anyway, but no, the booster's actually keeping people out of the hospital.
Wow. I've never seen such an unabashed pro-vaccine cheerleader who never talks about all of the concerning and immense amount of data showing that this is a failed vaccination campaign.
Okay, so we'll stop it there, and you can come to me.
Jesus Christ.
And let me just remind everybody that we're not endorsing anything those people are saying on that video because, as you know, the vaccine is safe and effective, and it'll slow the transmission and contraction of the virus, and it'll keep you from getting seriously ill, hospitalized, or death. That's the beauty of this vaccine.
I always get another booster, then I get a cheeseburger with my daughter.
What's happening?
Did I mention she's autistic, so that adds more weight to what I'm saying?
Oh, he did.
She's autistic, by the way, and
he did. So let's bring Dan Cohen, who put that together, and there's much more. I don't want to stop playing it, right? I just want to keep playing that.
It's like George Santos and Science Drag. Like he got a. Did you see his skin color at one point? That
Yes.
guy, it looked worse than when CNN faked Joe Rogan's skin color.
Yes, it did.
He looked like when in Frank Reynolds and It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, when he didn't want to look like a kid diddler, so he had a mortician do his makeup.
I didn't see it.
If you saw it, you know what I'm talking
So
about.
Dan Cohen, what else would you like to tell us about this guy who looks like, we're not sure, but it looks like he'll be the guy who gets replacing Fauci?
Artie Lang looks better.
You know what's crazy? He's actually only like 25 years old.
No, come on.
No, I'm just kidding. I mean, one thing, that piece, those pieces were done for Redacted with support. I want to shout out to Vaccine Safety Research Foundation. So, give them some love. This was not an Uncaptured Media production.
Oh, okay. Okay, so it was on that show Redacted.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's everybody likes that show.
Yeah, they just gave me total freedom to go, spend like weeks in the rabbit hole and come out with that mind melter. So, there's not a lot of other places that will do that. So, props
it's unreal
to
he
them.
had the balls to go on Rogan. Like, that's a really unabashed liar who's like, you're going to need someone to tell lies for you who has a bow tie and glasses.
Yeah.
That's the only time I've ever seen him challenged. Like, he blocks everyone on Twitter who even, asks him the most minor thing. And so you see how he melts down with the most minor challenge. And I think he probably thought, he was just going to get away with it on Rogan, but he just got exposed with the most minor, slight pushback. So you see what a total fraud he is.
I literally don't care what goes out of my mouth or goes into my body.
He doesn't. All he wants is keep getting vaccines. That's the key to health. Hey, you're obese. We got a vaccine for that.
The level of
you got headaches.
That you're doing it is what's really, because I've heard them all go back and forth. Fauci at least had the Christianity not to be so on his sleeve. What a scumbag! This dude there's nothing there, man.
This guy is scummy. This guy. Go ahead.
He's like clearly linked to intelligence, right? We watched that part.
So I watched that part. Tell people about that.
Well, he's he cites this is Putin interfering in our democracy and using anti-vaxx propaganda to destabilize democracies. He cites this report from Accenture, this spook outlet. He cites the Center for Countering Digital Hate, which is closely tied to the UK Labour Party, which we know how spook infested that is. Like, everything he cites is a spook show. And of course he's tied to, like, if you watch the first part, there's two parts to this thing. We saw most of the second part. The first one shows how he came up on basically because of Bill Clinton and Bill Gates and Fauci. Bill Clinton and Bill Gates, I gotta wonder, is he like jealous he never made it down to Epstein's Island? With those guys,
they said I smelled. My CIA code name is Bunsen Mildew, like the Muppet, but with a more wet smell.
But he really just kind of encapsulates or epitomizes the sort of biomedical security regime that was already in place for years and years and years pre-COVID, but then just went into overdrive, like really emerged and went on steroids during COVID and just destroyed so many lives. And you just see lie after lie after lie after lie, and he just he can't handle. Not only does he block, but obviously he wants censorship. So he just he got a girl banned from her synagogue, where that's where, like, her family generations back. This is Marissa Hanson, who's a Houston, Texas resident. She can't go visit her family's cemetery, her family who's buried there. She's banned because she politely interrupted Peter Hotez.
That was a lot more polite than normal, but I would like you to ban her for life.
Yeah, exactly. There are just so many aspects. There's another section in that piece that I think was right after what we just watched, where his vaccine that he developed, his coronavirus vaccine, which is not a vaccine at all, was...
Why do you say that?
Because it doesn't stop transmission, which is like the definition of a vaccine. It's like, I guess you could call it a treatment, but even that doesn't really work. And, one thing, Peter Hotez, when he testified in Congress, what he was talking about is something called antibody dependent enhancement. And that's basically when the vaccine makes the disease worse because it's a bad vaccine. And, that's a total risk with these things. And he knew it. And that's a risk with his vaccine that he got authorized to be used in India. And it went into the arms of like 70 million people in India. And then it came out that the Indian government actually totally ignored its own regulatory body's concerns. And then it got authorized in 2 other countries, in I think Indonesia and Botswana. So there are it should just be a major scandal. This guy should be investigated. And he also, if you watch further on in the second piece, he admits that the mRNA vaccines, the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, are failing finally. And so he says, well, so maybe this is an opportunity to, use my vaccine is what he gets at.
It's
and he
currently legal in countries where kids can smoke.
yeah. So it's like he wants to inject all of us with his junk. And it's just, we're just all living in a big Peter Hotez, Bill Gates kind of pharma experiment. Well, but I hate. Yeah, go ahead, Jimmy.
No, I just have to remind people that whatever you're saying about the vaccines, I have to remind them that the COVID-19 vaccine is super safe and effective, and it does slow the transmission and contraction, and it will keep you from getting seriously ill, hospitalized, or dead.
You can eat whatever you want.
You can eat whatever you want. Okay.
Do you remember Hitler had a fat doctor who smoked that was shooting him up with all his vitamin injections?
His vitamin injections were crystal
cocaine.
meth. Yeah.
Oh, he had everything. He had opiates in there.
Yeah.
So this doctor was just shooting him up with it. And then finally, I think this doctor sucks. And then Hitler in the bunker just didn't have his shit anymore.
Really?
I mean, that must have sucked coming down off all of it.
All of it, yeah. So, so he's in bed with Bill Gates. He sucked up to Fauci. I saw that first video. Everybody should go check it out. Everybody should go check out those videos. They're over at the Redacted YouTube page.
Yeah, on YouTube or Rumble. You can see him either place.
Okay. And, so he's been trying to work on this hookworm vaccine, right? So can you tell us a little bit about that?
So basically, since the beginning of his career, like the late 80s, I think actually in 1985, when I was born, he started this human hookworm vaccine, and which still hasn't succeeded.
Hookworm himself.
As a human hookworm himself. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It still hasn't succeeded. So you can show, you can see how good this guy is at what he does.
So he's been trying to develop this hookworm vaccine, right?
It turns out they're not a virus; they're a parasite. So you really can't.
And by the way, so Bill Gates and these guys, Hotez and stuff. So for instance, most of the stuff they're trying to develop vaccines for could be fixed with just sanitation and clean water.
Exactly.
And so instead of Bill Gates investing money in that, he'd invest $55 million in a vaccine instead of $55 million in clean water and sanitation, which is what actually would cure that stuff, right, Dan?
Exactly. It's not just human hookworm. It's like a whole bunch of these. So Peter Hotez, he coined the term neglected tropical diseases, just meaning tropical diseases, saying, oh, they're neglected. Well, we can't have that. So he got a bunch of money from Gates. He got a bunch of money from Fauci. And then that kind of tapped him into the whole, just millions and millions and millions of dollars, this whole industry of neglected tropical diseases.
I remember this guy.
Where they just go... What's that?
I remember this guy. I was watching unrelated, a thing with that term, neglected tropical diseases. It was him on one of those kind of, wow. It's like all that TED talk. You try to get your phrase, like your white fragility or whatever.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's marketing phrases.
Yes.
It's completely a marketing phrase. Look, Samantha Power was tweeting about neglected tropical diseases today. USAID has poured like
NTDs,
billions of dollars into this.
How much?
I don't remember the figure off the top of my head. It's in my video, but like billions of dollars, maybe $10 billion into, combating so-called neglected tropical diseases. And, which just means testing drugs where all you have to do, like you said, is just, have sanitary systems, clean water, basic things like that. But the whole idea is to keep Latin America, Africa, and South Asia underdeveloped and exploited. So not only corporations can extract wealth, but you can test drugs on people. You can treat them as guinea pigs.
To fight white supremacy.
Yeah, that's what they're doing. They are, like, for instance, I've seen reports where people talking about how Bill Gates wants to make a vaccine for malaria, and the people in Africa say, you know what would really help more would be nets, so people can sleep at night and not get bitten by mosquitoes. That's what would really help us.
Very little markup on those.
And like, yeah, we can't. Right, there's very little markup on that. So we'd rather have a vaccine for it.
One day I want to help those guys with the giant balls.
Exactly. But if you say any of this, according to Peter Hotez, you're an anti-Semite. And he partners with the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, which their whole shtick is to like say if anyone says free Palestine at like a protest, some like 20-year-old like Palestinian college student says like free Palestine because my house has been demolished. My grandparents like got kicked out of their house, then that's anti-Semitism. And so Peter Hotez and like it's not just Hotez, they're tied to the ADL's tied to Pfizer. They gave Borla their like courage award. So their whole thing is like, we're gonna say
what?
Yeah. So they're like, oh, any of that is now anti-Semitism. They're using the Israel Lobby's book. Actually, just in the last like couple days after I published this thing, Hotez put out a new study on anti-Semitism and anti-vaxx, and he gives these. It's all about him,
God.
and it's good. He has 4 examples of what he says are like anti-Semitic emails that he got, and of 3 of them, there's nothing remotely anti-Semitic, and the only one that could maybe be construed as anything like related to him being Jewish is the guy calls him a sick son of a kosher pickle eater. Which, like, if that's anti-Semitic, oh man, that's like embarrassing to like try to. That's it. So
I reject and denounce that.
I mean,
so anyway, I really urge everybody to go watch these 2 videos. I really they're mind blowing.
Yeah, this dude don't seem kosher to me.
So it is kind of mind blowing, and the stuff, his contradictions around. But he was one of those people, by the way, that said, and I think it might have even been in the part we showed already, where he was saying that the vaccine stops the transmission. No, he was saying that we could, if enough people get vaccinated,
vax our way out of this.
we can. So
yeah, with this back of an envelope calculation, you like
Hold
that?
on, let me get my envelope.
My back of the envelope for frickin' COVID. Let's go front of the envelope. Hey, why don't you just use your computer?
Hold on, there's some fry sauce on it.
Yeah.
And he wants to coup the White. He said it. He said, if we decapitate, like he talks about regime change. Those are like
more violent
military imperialist terms.
Trump's tweet that got him kicked off. Oh, so I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's it. So what he was saying there about was more violent than Trump's.
Can you imagine saying things like decapitate and a coup? Like,
and then he said we'd have the CDC just take over.
Yeah, the CDC, which is basically run by Big Pharma. I mean, you have the CDC Foundation, the parallel body that's just takes money from Big Pharma, and then they fund the CDC. I mean, that's just one of many conflicts of interest, but it's like the CDC, a bunch of technocrat Big Pharma, freaks who are just we'll just get rid of the executive branch of government, just casually promote that on MSNBC, and the hosts just like nod along. It's just unreal.
Well, Dan Cohen, everybody check out his new media outlet called Uncaptured Media. Is that at uncapturedmedia.com?
It's just on Substack, uncaptured.substack.com.
Okay, fantastic. Everybody check it out. Great work on this. I hope people found it as riveting as I did, and I hope I showed enough of it. But Dan Cohen, thanks for coming on, and thanks for all the work you're doing. I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Jimmy.
Hey, we're doing live stand-up comedy in Los Angeles, Tempe, Arizona, Palm Springs, Milwaukee, Minneapolis, Nashville, Northampton, Massachusetts, and a lot more places. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets and become a premium member while you're there. You get access to all of our stuff. See you then.